Call Moana Maki, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that speech probably highlights the fact that this is actually a very difficult bill, despite the fact that peace had pretty much broken out across the House in terms of accepting that we had to do something. We shouldn't be under any illusion that this was a pleasant bill to pass, that the issues that we were dealing with weren't serious, that the issues that we weren't dealing with, weren't very concerning. And a number of members have said it's the right thing to do. I think I'd probably more describe it as the least bad thing to do. Right. Of a number of very unpalatable options, it was the least unpalatable of all of them. Retrospective legislation is not good practice, and especially not when you're dealing with the kind of situation that we've seen up in Kaipara, the complete mismanagement and mishandling of the implementation of the wastewater scheme, of the loans that went along and debt that went alongside that. And I think it's fair to say that when the Select Committee travelled up to Maungaturoto and heard submissions, we were deeply, deeply concerned. There was a bit of pressure on the Select Committee to report back promptly to try and get this issue sorted, but we spent a lot of time working on this bill trying to ensure as much as we could that what we were doing was in the best interests of the ratepayers of Kaipara and could find a pathway forward. What our big concern was, one, that the Auditor-General was looking into this issue. Clearly there'd been audit failures. The fact that it took the ratepayers throughout the Kaipara district and particularly in Mangawhai many, many years to get any action on what was happening there, to shine a light on what was happening within their council, was deeply concerning. The Auditor-General is looking into that. Now, that process has dragged on and on and on. There are serious natural justice implications in terms of the Auditor-General's report, and so we had hoped that the Select Committee would get to see that report before we deliberated. We held the bill back at Select Committee on the understanding that the report would be coming out at the beginning of November, because there's a difference between retrospectively legalising or validating a simple mistake versus validating gross incompetence versus validating corruption. So there could have been a number of reasons why we got to this situation. Those are kind of the reasons we could have got there, and obviously the Select Committee was very keen to get some confirmation from the Auditor-General through that report that we weren't going to be retrospectively validating corruption. I want to thank the Office of the Auditor-General actually for coming in an enclosed session, providing us with information. They weren't able to tell us what was in the report, but providing some peace of mind that nothing in the report that they were going to produce ran up against this piece of legislation. Because that was a major issue for all members of the committee. The other interesting thing about when we went up to Maungaturoto and heard submissions was it's not clear-cut as to who is opposed to this and who supports it. There were ratepayers in Mangawhai who supported the bill. There were ratepayers in the rest of the Kaipara district who did not support the bill. And then, of course, there were obviously the ratepayers in Mangawhai who were very much opposed to it, just as there were ratepayers in the Kaipara district who were very much in favour of it. The ratepayers in Mangawhai have often been typified as being very, just wealthy people who don't live there, and actually that's no reason to say that they should have any kind of less legal rights or protection of their legal rights. It doesn't matter that they're wealthy or that they might live on the North Shore. The fact is, if they've been wrong, then that needs to be rectified. But in fact, what we also learned was there are a number of people living in Mangawhai who are now faced with massive rates increases who are actually very low income. So this isn't a black and white issue. This isn't a rich versus poor. This isn't even a Mangawhai versus the rest of the Kaipara district issue. It was far more complex than that, and the Select Committee worked incredibly hard to try and find a way through this. None of us think this is great legislation. None of us think that this is a perfect solution, but the reality is there are significant imposts being put on the rest of the ratepayers in Kaipara in terms of the services that can be provided, in terms of their access to NZTA funding for their regional roads, which they can't get until this is fixed. We did manage to negotiate an agreement to have an amnesty on the penalties, which I think is really important, to recognise that if they were illegally struck, then to penalise people for not paying them. It's a goodwill gesture of the Commissioners to say, OK, well, we will have an amnesty on that and we will not put those penalties in place. So it's a difficult, but I look forward to the New Zealand First SOPs in the committee stage in terms of their solution to what would be a better way through than this bill, and we will seriously look at those SOPs. If they can come up with a better way through that's that's fairer for everyone. This was the one solution that was least cost to the Kaipara district ratepayers.
I call Maggie Barry.